Part 3. Heaven help those who act. Nothing happens by itself. It all will come your way once you understand that you have to make it come your way by your own extension. By Ben Stein. Lesson 9. Associate with positive peoples. A mirror reflects a man's face, but what he is really like is shown by the kind of friend he chooses. The Living Bible, Proverbs 27. In high school, Mike spent a lot of time with a bunch of guys in his neighborhood. According to Mike, these guys just like to sit in the front of porch and watch cars go by. They had no goals, no dreams. They were always negative. Whenever Mike suggested they do something new, the others would discourage him. It's stupid. Or not cool. They told him Mike just went along with them so he could remain the part of the group. When Mike went off to the college, he still ran into some negative peoples, but he also met some positive peoples who wanted to learn, who wanted to achieve things. Mike decided to spend the time with the positive people. Almost immediately, Mike started to feel much better about himself. He developed a great attitude. He began to set goals. And I'm happy to tell you, now Mike runs his own successful video production company and has a wonderful family. One by one, he accomplishes all of his goals he has set. When I asked Mike what happened to his high school friends, he told me, they still live in the same neighborhood. They are still negative and they're still doing nothing with their lives. Mike added, I'd never be where I'm now. If I kept hanging out with those guys, I'd be still at the corner daily playing pinball. Mike's story is a great reminder about the influence others have on our lives. And yet sometimes we get in the habit of being certain people and we just don't think about the consequences. Have you ever heard the axiom? Tell me who you hang out with and I tell you who you are. There's a lot of wisdom in that simple statement. Have you given much thought to this? How this principle has been molding and shaping your life? Think back when you were growing up. Do you remind how concerned our parents were about who we hung out with? Our mom, dad wanted to meet our friends and know all kinds of detail about them. Why? Our parents knew that we'd be greatly influenced by our friends, that we'd tend to pick up some of their habits and we'd probably do the things our friends were doing. Our parents were concerned for good reason, and I'll bet that if you have children, you closely watch their friends because of the impact of the youngsters will have on your children. Toxic people and nourishing people. In today's literature, we see the term and toxic people and nourishing people. As you might expect, toxic people are the ones who always dwell on the negative. The dictionary defines toxic as poisonous. Toxic people continually spew their verbal poison. In contrast, the dictionary defines the nourishing is to promote the growth of. Nourishing people are positive and supportive. They lift your spirits and enjoy to be around. Toxic people will always try to drag you down to their level. They hammer away with you all of things you can't do and all of things that are impossible. They barrage you with gloomy statements about the lousy economy, the problems in their life, and the problems soon be in your life by the dreadful prospects for the future. If you're lucky, they might even throw a few words about their aches and pains. After listening to toxic people, you feel listless and drained. Motivational speaker Les Brown refers to these people as dream killers. Psychologist Jack Canfield describes them as energy vampires because they suck all positive energy out of you. Have you ever been with a negative person and felt if that individual were physically taking energy from you? I think we've all had experienced many times. One thing is certain, spend time with toxic people and their negative message will wear you down. We become part of what we are around. Unknown. On the other hand, how do you feel when you are around positive people who are positive, enthusiastic and supportive? You are energized and inspired. There is something truly amazing about positive people. They seem to have a positive energy that lights up a room. When you are around them, you start to pick up their attitude and you feel as if you have added strength to vigorously pursue your own goals. When I think about the positive people, my friend John Lisich immediately comes to my mind. Whenever I speak with John, I feel like I can conquer the world. John is simply the most positive person you could ever meet. I like to think myself as a very positive person on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being most positive. I probably give myself 9.5. I had give a John Lisich a 14. He's just off the charts. He's always positive, always enthusiastic, and he gives a tremendous life to everyone who across his path. His attitude inspires the people to greatness. Can you see how your attitude might improve if you had a friend like John in your life? Those silly songs on the radio. I am sure it happened to you many times. You hear a song on the radio and you say to yourself, "What a ridiculous song!" Later on the day, you hear the same song again and again. The following day, you heard the song few more times. As the song climbs the chart, you can't get away from it. You hear it several times each day for a week. Then something incredible happens. You're sitting at home and you all of a sudden you start to hum or sing that silly song. If at that very moment, if I were to ask what you think of the song, you'd tell me, "It's horrible." Then why on earth you are singing it? The reality is whatever you hear over and over will be the forefront of your consciousness. As you also know, once that song became less popular and isn't played frequently on the radio, you will tend to think about and sing it to yourself much less often. There's an important lesson here. The mind tends to dwell upon whatever it is repeated and over. Unfortunately, the mind doesn't discriminate between the messages that are good for us and those which are harmful. If we hear something often enough, we will tend to believe it and act upon it. Just as a song repeated many times will get us thinking about that song, so too will repeated thoughts about success get us thinking about success. So if we'll make sure to fill our mind with positive messages, we are going to be more positive and forward boldly to achieve our goals. The more positive reinforcement, the better. And where can we get positive reinforcement? Well, one way is to read motivational books. Congratulations, because you're doing that right now. In addition, you can listen to motivational audio programs and spend a lot of time with positive people. Smoky sponge theory. I've learned a lot about attitude and the importance of surrounding myself with positive people from my friend Glenn Smokey Stover. Smokey worked in sales for 45 years in the cemetery and funeral home industry. While this may sound like a gloomy field, let me assure you that Smokey is a positive dynamo. Every time I get off the phone with Smokey, I feel terrific. Smokey explained me that human beings are like sponges. We soak up whatever people around us are saying, so if we spend time with someone who is negative, we sponge up the negatives and it affects our attitude. Of course, the reverse is also true. When we hang around the positive, we soak up the positive. We feel better and perform better. I once asked Smokey, "What do you do if you are speaking with the negative people?" He said, "I get away from that person as soon as I can say. I'll say something like, 'Gosh, it's been good to see you, Charlie,' and I move on to another person." Then I asked Smokey, "Did you have ever a friend who was negative?" "Not for very long," he said. Well put, Smokey. Evaluate your friendship. It's crucial that you evaluate your friendship from time to time, even those you maintain for years. Trust me, this isn't a minor issue. Those who occupy your time have a significant impact on your most priceless possession, your mind. Are you surrounding yourself with negative friends and spending a lot of time with them in your leisure hours? If so, I'm going to ask you to think about spending much less time with these people or even no time at all with them. Sound harsh, doesn't it? After all, I'm suggesting that you limit or eliminate your involvement with some long-standing friends. When I tell people at these seminars, invariably someone raise a hand and accuse me of being cold or uncaring. The audience member will typically say, "Shouldn't we try to help our negative friends instead of dumping them?" Well, you're free to do whatever you think is best, and each situation must be dealt with in its own unique facts. However, I found that in most cases, hanging around these negative people doesn't help them, and it doesn't help you either. Everyone gets dragged down because most negative people don't want to change. They just want to someone listen to their tales of woe. Are the things around you helping you towards your success or are they holding you back? W. Clement Stone. If you have a strong urge to spend time with negative people, ask yourself, why am I choosing with these people? Consciously or unconsciously, you may be choosing to hold yourself back, to be less than you're capable of doing and becoming. By the way, I think it is wonderful to try help someone overcoming their negativity. But if you are being trying for several years and aren't getting anywhere, maybe it's time to move on. Let me clarify one more important point. I'm not making a judgment here that negative people are any less worthy than the other people. I'm saying that there are consequences if you spend the time with negative people. What are the consequences? You'll be less happy and less successful than you could be. Toxic relatives. What do you do if you happen to have toxic relative? Obviously, this is a touchy issue. What I'm going to suggest is that you don't turn back your family members. Family ties are precious and I think we must make every effort to maintain harmonious family relationship. Even so, I recommend that you put some controls in place that reduce the impact of your toxic relatives have on your life. You are not abandoning them or refusing them to speak with them, but you are putting some limits on your involvements with them. For example, if you have negative relatives, I suggest that you don't go off your way to call them on phone several times each day if you know they are going to put you down or criticize you every moment. What good can possibly come from that? We get bombarded with enough negativity as it is. Just to turn the radio or TV to read newspaper. Do we think our relatives to provide even more negative news? I don't think so. And here's another suggestion that will work equally well whether you are talking to a friend or relative. When the discussion moves to a negative subject, resist or temptation to accuse the person too of being negative. That will usually make things even worse. Instead, gently shift the conversation to more positive topic. Remember that I'm not asking you to disown your relatives or refuse to attend family functions. This is about your limitations to the contacts with the negative peoples so you don't get dragged down to their level. Positive people in workplace. Just about every organization have some negative people working there. And sometimes you have to interact and work alongside these peoples. But don't go out of the way you spend the time with these prop heads of gloom and doom. For instance, if you frequently have lunch with negative people at work, stop having lunch with them. All they're doing is filling your mind with negativity. You can't perform at your best, you allow these people to dump their negative garbage into your mind. There's no need of being nasty to tell them off. You should be able to find a diplomatic way of distancing yourself with this poisonous group. Instead, take a charge. Be proactive. Make it a point to eat at your desk, to take a client out to lunch or sit at a different table in the cafeteria. Do whatever you have to do to make a lunch positive experience. Make no mistake about it. Positive people are welcomed in any organization and negative people are hurting their chances of advancement. The problem of negative workers has gotten so bad that I recently got a brochure in the mail announcing a full-day seminar entitled How to Legally Fire Employees with Attitude Problems. The business community is waking up to the fact that when it comes to productivity in the workplace, attitude is everything. Choose your friends wisely. As I say at the beginning of this lesson, tell me who you hang out and with, and I will tell you who you are. If you are serious about getting a raise or promotion at your work, succeeding at your own business, or improving yourself as a human being, that you have to start or improving yourself associating with these people who can take you with the next level. As you increase your association with nourishing peoples, you will feel better about yourself and have renewed energy to achieve your goals. You will become more positive, upbeat person, the kind of person others love to be around. I used to think it was important to associate with positive people to limit involvement with negative people. Now I believe it's essential if you want to be a high achiever and a happy individual. So surround yourself with positive, nourishing people. They'll lift up your ladder to success. Good friends are good for your health. Dr. Irvin Saracen. Lesson 10. Confront your fears and grow. Do the thing you fear and the death of fear is certain. Ralph Waldo Emerson. As I sat in the audience listening to motivational speaker Gil Eagles Little did I know that one sentence was about to change my life. Gilly Girls gave a marvelous presentation that day. He had many valuable things to say, but there was one line, one absolute gem that stands out. Here's what he said. If you want to be successful, you must be willing to be uncomfortable. I'll never forget those words, and Gil was right on the money. To achieve your goals and realize your potential, you must be willing to be uncomfortable, to do things that you're afraid to do. That's how you develop your potential. Sounds so simple, doesn't it? And yet, what do most people do when they face a frightening situation or new activity? They back away from the fear. They don't take actions. I know, because that's what I did for the first 30 years of my life, and I can tell you, without hesitation, it's a losing strategy. Show me a successful person and I'll show you someone who confronts his or her fears and takes the action. Examining our fears. Have you ever been afraid or anxious before trying a new challenging activity? Has the fear ever stopped you from taking another action? I'm sure you've been paralyzed with the fear at one time or another in your life. I know I have. That's simply part of being human. Of course, every person has a different fear threshold. What frightens one person to death might have little impact on someone else. For example, to some, speaking in public or starting a new business is scary. Others might be fearful about asking someone for the directions or for a date. Regardless of how trivial or silly you believe your fears may be, this lesson applies to you. Nothing in life is to be feared, it's only to be understood by Marie Curie. When I talk about my fear, I'm not referring to a physical risk that might injure you or endanger your health, such as diving off cliffs in Acapulco or bungee jump. I'm scared of those things too, and I have no plans to do either of them. What I'm talking about here are those challenges that stand in the way of your personal and professional growth. These are the things that scare you, but which you know are necessary if you're going to get what you want in life. Comfort zone. When you are gripped by the fear and anxiety, it's usually because you're stepping out of your comfort zone. Let's take some time to discuss this important concept and how it relates to your success and the development of your potential. Each of us has a comfort zone, a zone of behavior that is familiar with us and where we feel comfortable and safe. Think of your comfort zone as the inside of the circle. The activities and situations that lie inside the circle are non-threatening and familiar. They are routine, part of your everyday life, the things you can do with no sweat. In this category, tasks such as speaking to your friends or co-workers or filling out the daily paperwork at your job. However, you occasionally face experiences or challenges that are outside your comfort zone. These are represented by X's and the diagram above. The farther the X is from the circle, the more afraid you are to participate in that activity. When faced with someone or something outside your comfort zone, you suddenly begin to feel nervous. Your palms become sweaty and your heart pounds. You begin to wonder, will I be able to handle it? Will others laugh at me? What will my friends and relatives say? As you look at the diagram above, what does the X represent for you? In other words, what fear is holding you back from reaching the next level of the success or fulfillment in your life? Is it the fear of approaching new prospects? Is it the fear of changing careers? Is it the fear about learning new skills? Is it fear of going back to school? Is it fear of telling other people what's on your mind? Is it the fear of public speaking? Whatever that X represents for you, just be honest and admit it. My guess is that thousands, if not millions, of people have the very same fear you have. In fact, let's take a closer look at what the most people are afraid of. The most common fears. During many of my presentations, I distribute index cards to the audience members and ask them to write down anonymously the fears that are standing in the way of their professional and personal growth. Then I collect those cards and read them aloud. What do you think when people write on those index cards? In most audiences, regardless of profession and geographical location, the same answer come up again and again. Here are some of the most common fears they identify. Public speaking or giving presentations. In virtually every group, this is the number one fear. The vast majority of the people are terrified about the speaking in front of the group of the people, hearing the word no or having their ideas rejected. This response is very common among salespeople, especially those who make cold calls, changing job or starting their own business. Over the year, I've noticed that more and more people are listening to the fear. We have a lot of unhappy workers in corporate America today, and they earn more satisfying work environment, but they're afraid to do anything about it, telling managers or executives negative news, what the managers or executive don't want to hear. This is one of the self-explanatory. Talking to people in upper management. Many entry-level workers and even managers are terrified about the speaking to executives in the company. They even hesitate to make a small talk with the president or CEO of their organization for fear they'll standing or say something silly or they appear stupid. Fear of failure. Those who won't try or try something new for the fear that it won't work out will tackle this issue in more depth in lesson 11. Well, are you surprised by any of the fear in this list? Do you have any of them now, or have you let them in the past? The truth is, the overwhelming majority of the people experience this fear at some points of their lives. And if you have some fears that weren't in the list, don't worry about it. You're stronger than your fears, and you can overcome them. The benefit of backing away from your fears. When confronted with an anxiety-producing event, most people retreat to avoid the fear and anxiety. That's what I used to do. You see, backing away does relieve the fear and anxiety that would have resulted if you followed through with the activity. For instance, if someone asks you to make an activity, with the activity, presentation with your company and your decline, you save yourself sleepless night you'd having worrying about it, and the nervousness you'd experience in the day leading up to the presentation. In fact, I found that's one of the only benefit you get by retreating a momentary avoidance of anxiety. Think about it for a moment. Can you list any of the other benefits that people get when they refuse to confront their fears? I've asked that question 1,000 times and nobody has been able to come up with any additional benefits. For good reason, there are none. The price you pay. Now I want you to seriously consider the price you pay when you back away from those fears that are standing in the way of your growth. Here what happens. Your self-esteem is lowered. You feel powerless and frustrated. You sabotage your success. You lead an uneventful, boring life. Is this a price worth paying for short-term avoidance of the fear and anxiety? Most of us are indeed willing to pay this dear price simply to avoid temporary discomfort and possibly ridicule from others. Trust me, folks, this is an insane. In the long run, retreating is not the best way to handle your problem. You'll never be highly successful or develop your talents to the fullest until and unless you're willing to confront your fears. My school strategy. When I was in the high school, I was pretty shy and didn't feel very good about myself. But I was never rejected when it came to asking about someone for a date. If you're looking at me now, you'd probably be thinking, he's not bad looking, but he's certainly no Tom Cruise. My strategy was really quite and simple. I never asked anyone out of a date. You see, I wasn't going to let anyone reject me, and what I did accomplish. I was horrible about myself. I knew I had wimped out. I felt powerless, and as you can imagine, I didn't have a full social calendar. I was sabotaging my success. He who loses his wealth loses much. He who loses a friend loses more, but he who loses his courage loses all. By Miguel de Cervantes. Because I refused to face my fear, I remained in the background while most of the friends and classmates went out on dates. How do you think that made me feel? Pretty lousy, just as you'd expect. In case you're wondering, I did have few dates during that period of my life, but only when other people arranged them. I wasn't going to allow anyone to say no to me. In reality, I was saying no to myself. Can you see how my strategy of backing away from fears worked against me? Now it's true that if I had someone for a date in high school, a few of them might say no, but you know what? I wouldn't have died. I could have asked another person, and the other eventually would have gotten a yes. I wasn't until college that I began to take some baby steps to confront this fear of rejection. Little by little, I gained more and more confidence, and in law school, I had the good fortune to meet Dolores, and we've been married more than 30 years. A new life. I'm really no different from you. I have my fears just as you do, and when I look at the back of first 30 years of my life, you know what I see? I see someone who had achieved some degree of success and an attorney. But I also see someone who was shy, insecure, scared, and self-conscious. Does that sound you like someone who's a motivational speaker who turned my life around and improved millionfold? Is that I learned to confront my fears and take actions? I realized after years of frustration and disappointments that hiding from my fears wasn't getting me anywhere, and it would never get me anywhere. Of course, I wouldn't have confronted my fears if I hadn't first developed a positive attitude. A can-do attitude provided me with extra push I needed to take action. When you believe you can do something, you have the courage to move forward despite of being afraid. Armed with great attitude, I decided to become a participant in my life and explore my potential. Even though I was scared, from the very beginning I felt so much better about myself. I had taken control of my life and all sorts of possibilities opened up for me. Are you beginning to see the incredible rewards you can receive when you are willing up to develop a positive attitude and confront your fears? Reframe the situation. If I could give you a way to confront an uncomfortable situations without fear or anxiety, you'd be ecstatic and eternally grateful, wouldn't you? Sorry, but there's no such magical solution. I can't wave a magic wand and take away your fears. How then can you muster the courage to do things that you fear, but which are necessary for your success and growth? The next time you face a scary situation, I suggest you take a different outlook. Most people start with thinking, I won't be able to do this well, and other people may laugh at me or reject at me. They get hung up about how well they're going to perform. Because of these worries, they decide to retreat. While you should always go in with a positive attitude and prepare beforehand to the extent possible, don't be overly concerned with the result. Consider yourself an immediate winner when you take the step and do the thing you fear. That's right. You are a winner just by entering the arena and participating regardless of the result. Moving forward when you are afraid. For instance, let's assume you are afraid to speak in the public, but you confront your fear and do it anyway. The moment you get up, speak before the audience, you're a winner. Your knees may be shaking, your voice may be quivering. That doesn't matter. You faced your fear and accepted the challenge. Congratulations are in order. The likely result that your self-esteem will be enhanced and you will feel exhilarated. On your first attempt, you won't be hailed as the world's finest speaker. So what? Let's face it, you can't expect to be an accomplished speaker during your first presentation. Were you a great tennis player after your first game or a great swimmer first time you entered the water? Developing any skill that takes time. I remember my first motivational speech. That was in 1988, and my performance was nothing to write home about. I gave a free talk to group real estate salespeople, and let me tell you, I was terrified. I couldn't take my eyes off my notes. Fortunately, the content of my presentation was very solid, and the audience also responded well. By the way, but I had a long way to go before I could call myself a good speaker. On the second presentation, I was a little better, and when I had done 5 or so presentations, I began to rely less and less on my notes and to develop a stronger connection with the audience. For the period of 20 years, I gave presentations to thousands of people each year through United States and abroad. But let's not forget that it all started with a scared guy who gave a very unimpressive talk in 1988. She followed her dream. I'd like to tell you a story about a woman who knows a lot about breaking out the comfort zone. Her name is Dottie Berman, and for 32 years, Dottie was a high school English teacher in New York. Yet, since age of 10, she wanted to go into show business. She never get it serious through as her career instead of choose a security of teaching with its regular payback and paycheck benefits. The only way to escape from the prison of fear is action. Joe time. While working as a teacher, Dottie began to write songs and perform them. It was just a hobby, but it kept her dream alive. Then in late 1980s, Dottie made a decision. She would retire from teaching and pursue a new career as a performer. In the summer of 1988, she submitted her resignation, and then terror really hit her. She was so scared about venturing into the unknown that she withdrew her resignation and went back to teaching. But something inside Dottie wouldn't let her dream die. 6 months later, in January of 1989, she confronted her fear and retired. At the time, Dottie was on her 50s. In 1992, Dottie developed and performed her own one musical show. The show was based on her fear leaving secure teaching job to go into the show business. And in the spring of 1998, Dottie, while in her 60s, released her marvelous CDs, I'm in Love with My Computer, a collection of witty, inspirational songs. She also performed these songs in musical review of New York City as well as for organizations throughout the country. Bravo Dottie for confronting your fears and inspiring to us to following our dreams. Just do it. Ralph Waldo Emerson offered some simple advice, which if you can follow and can transform your life. He said, do the thing you fear and the death of fear is certain. I know this advice makes me a good sense, but some people are just too afraid to act. Remember my prior words about the steep price you pay when you let fear dominate you. In the end, running away from your fears is a losing strategy. It will only bring you frustration and from the happiness. I can tell you that from personal experience. Running away from your fears is a losing strategy. By Jeff Keller. There's nothing wrong with having some fears. Successful people have fears. The difference is that successful people take action and move forward despite being afraid. It's not always easy, I'll grant that. But you'll always feel better about yourself when you face your fears. In the last 20 years, I've been privileged of traveling throughout the United States and abroad and of speaking with thousands of people. During all this time, I haven't met one person who confronted his or her fear, took action, and later regretted it. Not a single one, but I've met many people who tell me how they regret backing from away their fears and letting their dreams die. So, stretch yourself, confront your fears, and be willing to expand your comfort zone. The courage muscles can be developed just like any other muscle with exercise, and when you do an activity outside your comfort zone a few times, you know what happens. That same activity becomes a part of your comfort zone. There's another bonus when you're willing to expand your comfort zone. When you push through fear and take action in some well-fought zone, areas of your life, you will develop a confidence in other areas as well. It's true. As I become more comfortable as a speaker, I also become a better salesman, a better businessman, a better listener, and the list goes on and on. You can try to dance around it all you want, but you won't develop your abilities to the fullest unless you are willing to uncomfortable. Life doesn't award those who refuse to expose themselves to difficulties and challenges. It's important that you put yourself in a positive position to run and win, and that means to take action in despite of being fear. Confront your fears, and you are on the way to developing your potential and leading exciting, fulfilling life you deserve. It's a decision you will never regret.